Long before Britain became a kingdom, before castles, kings, and empires, this island was home to warriors, tribes, and ancient cultures. Dense forests covered the land, hill forts stood on the highest hills, and powerful tribes ruled different regions. The early history of Britain is often forgotten, but these beginnings shaped everything that Britain would later become. This is the story of the forgotten beginnings of Britain. Around 12,000 years ago, the first humans arrived in Britain. At that time, Britain was not an island. It was connected to Europe by a massive land bridge called Doggerland. Hunter-gatherers crossed this land while following animals like deer, wild cattle, and horses. Life was difficult. People lived in small groups and depended completely on nature for survival. They used stone tools to hunt and build simple shelters. But over time, the climate began to warm. The ice sheets melted, and the sea slowly swallowed the land bridge. Britain became an island. This separation would play a huge role in shaping its future. By 3000 BC, early communities in Britain began building massive stone monuments. The most famous example is Stonehenge. Huge stones weighing more than 20 tons were transported across long distances. Even today, historians still debate how these ancient builders managed such an incredible task. Some believe Stonehenge was a religious temple. Others believe it worked as a solar calendar to track the movements of the sun. Whatever its true purpose was, one thing is clear. These early societies were far more advanced than we often imagine. They had organization, engineering knowledge, and strong cultural traditions. But a new culture was about to rise in Britain. A culture that would dominate the island for centuries. Around 800 BC, a new culture began spreading across Britain. These people were known as the Celts. The Celts were not one single nation. Instead, they were made up of many different tribes, each with its own leader, warriors, and traditions. Over time, these tribes spread across much of Britain and Ireland. Celtic society was based on tribal loyalty and warrior culture. Powerful chiefs ruled their tribes, and strength in battle was highly respected. Warriors were trained from a young age. They fought with iron swords, spears, and shields. The Celts were among the first people in Britain to widely use iron weapons, which made them far more effective in battle. Their settlements often took the form of hill forts. These were large fortified communities built on high ground. Thick walls, deep ditches, and wooden gates protected the people inside. Hill forts were not just defensive structures, they were also centers of trade, leadership, and daily life. Some hill forts were enormous and could hold thousands of people. Celtic society was also deeply connected to religion and nature. Their spiritual leaders were known as Druids. Druids were some of the most respected figures in Celtic culture. They acted as priests, teachers, judges, and advisors to tribal leaders. They performed religious ceremonies, studied the natural world, and passed knowledge through oral tradition. Because the Celts rarely wrote things down, much of what we know about them comes from later Roman accounts. The Celts believed that nature itself was sacred. Forests, rivers, and hills were often seen as spiritual places. Rituals and ceremonies were sometimes held in sacred groves deep inside forests. Despite their rich culture and strong warriors, the Celtic tribes had one major weakness: they were divided. Britain was home to dozens of tribes. Some of the most powerful included the Iceni, the Brigantes, and the Catuvellauni. These tribes often fought one another. Alliances changed frequently, rivalries were common, and this lack of unity would eventually make Britain vulnerable to a powerful new force arriving from the south, a force that would completely transform the island. In 43 AD, the mighty Roman Empire invaded Britain. The invasion was ordered by Emperor Claudius. Roman legions were highly disciplined and extremely organized. Compared to the divided Celtic tribes, the Roman army was far more powerful. Many tribes were quickly defeated, but resistance still existed. One of the most famous rebellions was led by Boudica. She led a massive uprising against Roman rule. Her army destroyed Roman cities and nearly pushed the Romans out of Britain, but eventually Roman forces defeated the rebellion. Roman control over Britain continued to grow. For almost 4 centuries, Rome ruled much of Britain. They built roads, towns, and forts across the island. One of their most famous constructions is Hadrian's Wall. This massive wall stretched across northern England. It marked the northern boundary of Roman Britain. Roman rule brought new ideas, architecture, and trade. Cities developed, and Roman culture spread. But by the early 4th century, the Roman Empire was weakening. Eventually, Roman soldiers left Britain, and once again, the island was open to new invaders. After the Romans left around 410 AD, new groups arrived from northern Europe. These were the Anglo-Saxons. They settled across large parts of Britain and formed their own kingdoms. Among the most powerful were Wessex, Mercia, and Northumbria. These kingdoms fought for power for centuries. From their struggles, the foundations of England would slowly emerge. Britain's history did not begin with kings and castles. It began thousands of years earlier, with ancient hunters, mysterious stone monuments, fierce Celtic tribes, and powerful empires. These early centuries formed the true foundations of Britain. They're the forgotten beginnings of a nation that would one day influence the entire world.